Hello, I'm Ted Kavich, and welcome to My Perfect Read, brought to you by your Fairfax County Public Library. Have you ever walked into a branch and thought, I'd love to pick out a new book, but there are so many, I don't even know where to start? Well, we're here and happy to help. My Perfect Read is our new personalized online service where you can meet our library staff and also check out their recommendations for books and authors that they love and think you'll enjoy too. The Fairfax County Public Library has thousands of books waiting for you to check out, whether they are in print, on CD, or in digital ebook or e-audiobook form. Joining me today to share some of their current favorites are Matt Moffett from Burke Center Library and Sharon Wasserman from Martha Washington Library. Welcome.
Thanks, Ted.
Yes, Sharon, we'll start with you. Can you share one of the titles you've brought with you today?
Sure. So I brought IQ by Joe Ide. And this is essentially a reimagining of Sherlock Holmes. If Sherlock Holmes were a 20-something African-American unlicensed detective living in South Central Los Angeles.
Wow.
So IQ is actually the initials of Isaiah Quintabe, who is the protagonist in this novel. And as I mentioned, he's an unlicensed private detective, and he solves crimes for people in his neighborhood, many of whom can't pay him with money, so they will give him casseroles or live chickens as payment. But occasionally he does need to earn some cash. So in this book, he takes on the case of a rap artist named Calvin Wright, who is being harassed and terrorized by a contract killer. So Isaiah takes that on. While we're reading about that case, though, we learn about Isaiah's backstory. When he was in high school, he was living with his older brother, Marcus, who had been taking care of him since they were children because their parents had passed away. And they're walking out on the street, and Marcus is killed by a hit-and-run driver. So Isaiah is obviously devastated by this. He gets a roommate to help keep him in his apartment, and the roommate's name is Juanel Dodson, and he becomes his sort of partner in crime, and they go on to become a team
like
solve
Holmes and
these
Watson.
crimes. Exactly.
Very cool.
So yeah, so this is the first in the series. There are two others out now, and then there is another one that is being published in January.
And is the book is in multiple formats,
It's
I presume?
available in audiobook and e-audio and ebook as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right.
Great.
Matt, what's on your list to check out?
So first thing I brought is A History of the World in 6 Classes by Tom Standage. Tom is both a food writer and a historian. He's got a couple of other books about the history of food, and this one focuses specifically on beverages. And it looks at beer, wine, hard liquor, coffee, tea, and soda. So it looks at the history of all of them, how they developed, where they came from, but also kind of the cultural importance we place on all of them. So it kind of starts way back in ancient Mesopotamia and talks about the development of beer kind of alongside of agriculture, and it was used early on, at least we think, as a way of preserving water. And then the extra benefits that came along with beer ended up getting incorporated into social aspects and religious ceremonies and things like that. And as kind of the tools for alcohol spread to other parts of the world, places that didn't have grain would try it out with fruit. So that's how we get wine and so on and so forth. And some of the drinks that he talks about later on, like tea, coffee, and soda, particularly Coca-Cola in this book, were often had their rise in popularity because of various temperance movements throughout time. So it's kind of an interesting lens to kind of look at the kind of the wide swath of largely Western history. But it's a good read if you like books like Salt, that kind of have that kind of narrow focus with the kind of a broad view at the same time. It's a good read.
Very interesting. And can I get that on ebook on my tablet if I want to?
You can get it on your tablet. I actually listened to the audio. It's great audio, and and on computer too. Yep.
Excellent. Thank you. Sharon, can you share another title you've brought?
Sure. So my next book is Lab Girl by Hope Jaron. And this is a memoir, came out a few years ago. And you know, there are lots of memoirs out there by people who take a long time figuring out what they want to do in their life, or they change careers multiple times. This is not that kind of book. Hope Jaron knew from a very early age that she wanted to be a research scientist. Growing up in Minnesota, she would go to her father's lab. He was a professor at their community college in their small town. And she just knew early on that that's what she wanted to do. Wow. So she is a paleobotanist, which is somebody who studies plant fossils. And so it's a memoir of her going through undergraduate, graduate, setting up her first lab. And she intersperses the chapters of the memoir with little short chapters on different elements of plants. Like she'll talk about vines and seeds, but her writing is just beautiful. And one of the other things that's significant about the book is there's a central character, her lab partner and best friend, who's a man named Bill, who's quite eccentric. And she basically takes him wherever she goes when she sets up a new lab. So when she gets a job at a new university, he goes with her. So it's quite an amazing relationship. And this is available on audio as well. And it is available as a book club kit.
Oh, yes. We have a bunch of those in our system, and they're so cool. You get a sort of a bin, right, that has several copies of the book.
Right.
Questions for discussion. It's perfect for book clubs. They can check out the whole kit, and they can return everything at the same time, kind of. They just take them out together, return them together.
And I think it's a 6-week loan period.
Yeah.
So that's to say this is a great book for book clubs. But so.
Good one. Thank you.
Oh, sure.
Matt, what else have you brought for us?
My next one's a little different. It's The Kraken by China Miéville. He's a sci-fi and fantasy author. He doesn't write series. Each one of his books is a standalone, and each one kind of takes a different twist on a trope within the genre. And this one, he kind of goes after monster books and monster movies, and with kind of a Lovecraftian kind of twist.
So I'm a fan of horror and Lovecraft, so I'm already very interested in this book. So great choice.
Yeah, he's a British author, so it's very British in some ways. It's set in London, and the main character is a young man named Billy, and he works at a science museum. And the keystone for their collection is an embalmed giant squid. And when the book opens, he's on a museum tour, just leading a kind of the regular gaggle that kind of comes through the museum all the time. And they're walking down, and he's giving kind of their basic spiel of what the squid is and how they found it and how they preserved it. And they get down there, and it's gone.
Oh, no.
And then real close by, they find a murdered body. And when he finally gets in touch with the police a little bit later, the police think it's this weird kind of squid cult people that stole it, wanting to bring about the end of the world.
Very Lovecraftian.
Yes. So he gets, as he learns a little bit more, he learns about all these weird little nooks and crannies of dark magic in and around London, and gets involved in a plot of a bunch of different cults all vying for this embalmed squid because they all think it's going to be a tool to bring about their own personal version of the apocalypse.
Oh, wow.
So it's a little wacky, it's a little scary, it's a little bit funny, and lots of references to Lovecraft and other things. So if you're a fan of the genre, it's a fun one.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Sharon, I'm sure you brought some more good titles.
Yes.
Ooh, that looks great.
Yes. So this one is Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman, and Neil Gaiman may be familiar to a lot of people. He's written a lot of books.
He's a superstar.
Yes, for all ages, from children up to adults. Most of them have an element of fantasy and mythology. And so this is, he has pulled together several myths from the Norse culture, and he has retold them in a sort of more modern way. So all, the three main characters that we all are familiar with from the Marvel, comics, Thor and Loki and Odin.
Right.
So we sort of hear a little bit more about their backstories, like how Thor got his hammer, but we also learn about other characters like Freya and Frey and the various frost giants. So it's just a really fun
And his style is so
compilation.
great too, right? His
Yes.
always very very interesting and funny and
Yes, very,
yeah.
very funny.
Yeah.
And I listened to this on audio, which I highly recommend because he reads it.
He reads it
and
himself?
He reads it
Oh,
himself.
yes.
And he does the voices. So he does the voice of Thor. And it's a lot of fun.
Having a good reader in an audiobook can really make the experience so amazing. It's just
Yes.
really, really great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So,
Thank
yeah.
you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on this edition of My Perfect Read. If you're interested in learning more about our books, programs, and resources for everyone, make sure to visit your nearest Fairfax County Public Library or check out My Perfect Read online at research.fairfaxcounty.gov/myperfectread. See you next time.